the practice of giving and taking. And this word secretly suggests that it is a form of practice, a practice of compassion that perhaps may not be suitable at the beginner's stage. It is a form of mental training that requires a certain amount and depth of courage and also kind of commitment. So this is also hinted in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And in terms of actual practice, then this taking and giving and taking Tonglen practice is done in conjunction with the process of exhalation and inhalation, the process of breathing, as suggested in Chekawa's 7 points of training the mind. So maybe also the word secretly, adjective secretly, may also be referring to a need for certain integrity on the part of the practitioner, so that the practice of Tonglen is done in a discreet way, so that the person does not, the practice of Tonglen and the practice of so spiritual training such as Tonglen must be cultivated by a true practitioner in a non-exhibitionist way, in a discreet way. In fact, one of the Tibetan masters of the thought training of the mind lineage, Chekawa, states in his text called 7 point training of the mind. He states that it is the inner states of mind and the thoughts and emotion which needs to be radically transformed and overhauled. But in terms of external appearance of the person, one should remain the same. So the point he's making here is that it is dangerous for practitioners to succumb to the temptation of showing off. And sometimes what happens, especially in these days, is that people who have a little degree of experience tend to then assume a certain air of importance or kind of certain air of being spiritual, and then in fact what happens in that kind of situation is that it really cheapens one's true experience. So what is required is that kind of true integrity for a genuine practitioner.
Yeah. That's the Jabadida. That Jabadi, that are going down Cheji, Dawet me Mabashis. Chigun, Shebe, Shemichimala, that shall go Dumbe, a shall go Gabe, Kamotamuni would dig it. Jitin Cheja the Madabores, that the one Resha. But a net is Losing Shaggy, and Marian, Sanders with the Naked Chumina, the meat terror stamming, me marriage stamming some tension, it is your name we are. The Lily Dua. So that is a social good.
Then the next. So the next verse, the verse 8th verse reads, may they not be defiled by the concepts of the 8 mundane concerns. In the last 2 lines, and aware that all things are illusory, may their ungrasping be free from bondage. The last 2 lines, in fact it's 3 lines in the English translation, that these lines then present the need to encompass one's practice within the understanding of emptiness, whereas the first 2 lines emphasize the need to ensure that one's spiritual practice and training of the mind is not polluted by the 8 mundane concerns or considerations. And this is important even for the teacher, for myself, for example. Sitting on the throne here, I'm giving you this lecture, and if somewhere in my thought there is a kind of a sense of, kind of curiosity, oh, have I performed well? What do people think of my lecture? Do they praise? Do they find it are they happy with it, and so on? These are kind of mundane considerations, mundane concerns that should not really obscure and pollute a true spiritual training.
다 강바 치마니부디기 추근 규모를 시에 토네스 아니 신진 미시바세가다 제가 다 추근 규모를 시에 봐라 나 규모도 시에 봐라 냐나 담박해고 그래 담박해고 뭐주나 아니 담바라 나야 믿음 규모도 통투야 매발해 그래서 드레이 메인드산에 아니 냐나 가서 그래 단동 가다베 탄담다바다 디 아니 녜고요아래 뒷단을 바꾸고요아래 사무 동반이 녜야승이디 저도 동반이 임버리 동반이 임버다 사로 셰셰베 드기야마 동반이 삼베 매버로 셰셰베 드기야마래 다디 셰타관에 런신이 동반이 임버베 녜만 예버시고요 녜버서고요아래 그래서 다 대원이야 아니 군세상다니 녜버 창고야 지다 런신 동반이서 금디 우모임버래 당시에 탄이도 좋아하신 말. 저리 인도산에 땅달래 미통을 주고 야라라 찬달래 미통을 주고 야래. 자, 다디 두지 다베 가서 그게 섭슈디 아니 땡중 사대团땡중 참여다 된다게 되네. 봐다. 땡네 중앙 인도산에 아니 샤라라레바데 구고 야래. 샤라라레바 인도산에 샤라라마레베 라메 똥아래. 근데 인도산에 런신기 예버다가 딱배 탈래 조용 야래. 런신기 매베 두지 커라 아니 때는 딱고 인상 슬럽이는데 때는 딱고 슬럽이 예버지 매버지 멤버 그 때는 유주지 예버 인도잖아요 그에니 때는 매버에 뭐임지 독신다 고하시 내용도가 탄이세요 고와 넘버 타보지 때네 아니 그게 런신도 시작인도잖아요 아니 가서 강성도 동상식마도 각 개명인식이 되듯이 놀려야 샤야지 냠용주 충분히나 냠용 대 장배 아니 제기 아저씨 군소부 처리야 동지주 제배 커돌이야 아니 나야 메도 주모도 통통이야래 대대비 주모도 통에 땡네 아니 아주 지 가서 그래 랑생게 töön 주야지 참으로 주모도 아니 땡네 다 주야지 중앙이나 아니 가서 그게 손이 송질로 들어도 그러지 샤베.
So the last 2 lines, as I mentioned earlier, speak about the need to engage in one's training of the mind with a full understanding of the ultimate truth, emptiness. And it states that one should develop the awareness that all things are illusory, and without grasping, one should free oneself from the bondage. And here, what is required is that before one can cultivate the perspective of understanding everything in terms of illusion-like nature, first one has to negate the substantial reality of everything, including one's own self. And without negating that substantial reality of existence, there is no possibility of developing the perception of the illusory nature of everything. So now how do we develop this understanding of the non-substantiality or emptiness of everything? Here, it's simply not enough to imagine and that everything is empty and everything is devoid of substantial existence. And also it is not enough simply to just keep this repeating in one's mind and kind of, almost like a sort of like a formula. That is also not adequate. What is required is to develop a genuine insight into emptiness through a rational process, through a process of analysis and through a process of reflection. And so one of the most effective and convincing reasons for understanding everything as empty and absent of substantial reality is understanding the interdependent nature of reality, the dependently originating reality of everything. So what is unique about the understanding of dependent origination is that within that understanding of dependent origination, there is a possibility to find that middle way between total nothingness on the one hand and substantial or independent existence on the other. Because things are dependent and dependently originated, this mere understanding of the dependent nature suggests that they lack independent nature or independent existence. That status as some kind of independent reality is rejected even by the understanding of dependence. And the idea that things originate in relation to others through a kind of a complex matrix of dependently originating facts, then one protects oneself against the danger of falling into a nihilism, thinking that nothing exists. So by finding that true middle way, then one can arrive at a genuine understanding and insight into emptiness. And once that kind of insight into emptiness is developed in one's meditation through a rational process and also through deep contemplation, and then in the aftermath of that realization, when you interact with the world, the objects around you and the world, then there is a kind of a new quality to your engagement with the world, because there is this awareness of the illusion-like nature of reality. So the text here suggests that the practitioners of training of the mind should engage in one's training with that kind of awareness of the illusion nature of reality.
뭐야? 다잖아. 로종 생기면 다가 좋지. 다 좋지지.
So with that, the teaching on the 8 verses of training the mind is finished, and we will have. So before we proceed on to the ceremony of generating the mind for enlightenment, we will have about 10 minutes